In the ancient kingdom of Eldoria, where stone castles crown the hills and narrow cobbled streets wound through markets filled with lantern light, there lived an old man named Edmund Hale. His hair was as white as winter frost, and his back had begun to bend like the branches of the willow trees near the riverbank. The townspeople often saw him sitting on a wooden bench outside his small cottage at the edge of the village, his weathered hands resting on a carved walking stick. To many, he looked like a man waiting for the end of his days. But inside Edmund's tired heart, a quiet battle was still being fought. In his youth, Edmund had been a skilled architect. He had helped design the grand watchtower that still stood at the eastern wall of Eldoria. The king himself had once praised his work. Edmund had a loving wife, Margaret, whose laughter used to echo through their home like music. They had one son, Thomas, who dreamed of becoming a knight. Life had once felt full of promise. But time, as it always does, changed everything. Margaret fell ill during a harsh winter and passed away when the snow still covered the rooftops. Thomas, determined to prove himself, joined the royal guard and was sent to a distant province. Years passed without letters. Some said there had been battles. Some said many soldiers never returned. Edmund never received confirmation, only silence. That silence became heavier than any stone he had ever lifted. As the years stretched on, Edmund's work slowed. Younger builders took his place. His hands trembled too much to draw steady lines. Eventually, he retired not because he wished to, but because the world no longer had use for his aging strength. Loneliness settled into his cottage like a permanent guest. Many evenings, Edmund would look toward the ancient cathedral that stood at the center of Eldoria. Its tall spires pierced the sky, and its bells rang faithfully at dawn and dusk. Margaret had loved that cathedral. She used to tell him, "God writes our lives like you draw your buildings, Edmund. Every line has purpose, even if we cannot yet see the design." In his grief, Edmund had struggled to believe those words. If there was a design, it seemed unfinished. If there was a plan, it felt painfully unclear. One autumn afternoon, when the leaves were golden and the air carried a quiet chill, a young boy wandered near Edmund's cottage. The boy's name was Samuel, an orphan who survived by running errands in the market. His clothes were worn, and his eyes held a cautious sadness that reminded Edmund of his own reflection. "Sir," Samuel asked timidly, "is it true you built the great watchtower?" Edmund looked up, surprised that anyone still remembered. "I," he replied softly. "Many years ago." Samuel's eyes widened. "I want to build things one day. Strong things. Things that last." Edmund felt something stir within him, something he thought had long faded. He invited the boy to sit beside him. That afternoon turned into many afternoons. Edmund began teaching Samuel the basics of drawing, measuring, and understanding the strength of stone. His old tools, which had gathered dust, were brought out once more. As winter approached, Samuel came to Edmund with troubling news. The small wooden bridge that connected the poorer side of the village to the main market had begun to crack. It was old and weak, and several children had nearly fallen through its boards. The town council, focused on reinforcing the castle walls, had delayed repairs. "They say it's not important," Samuel said, frustration trembling in his voice. "But for us, it is everything." Edmund felt a familiar spark ignite in his chest. He asked Samuel to take him to the bridge. Leaning heavily on his walking stick, Edmund examined the structure. The beams were rotten, the supports unstable. He could see, clearly as he once did in his youth, what needed to be done. The next morning, Edmund went to the council hall. The journey left him breathless, but he stood before the officials with dignity. Some barely recognized him. "I may be old," he began, his voice steady though quiet, "but I know how to mend that bridge. It will not take grand resources, only wise design. Let me help." The council members exchanged doubtful glances. Yet there was something in Edmund's eyes, a quiet authority forged by experience, that convinced them to grant him the chance. For weeks, Edmund worked alongside Samuel and a handful of villagers. He no longer had the strength to lift heavy timber, but he guided every measurement, every joint, every support beam. Samuel carried out his instructions with devotion. Word spread through Eldoria that the old architect had returned to work. When the bridge was completed, it stood stronger than before, reinforced with a clever arch beneath its span, a design Edmund had once used in the watchtower. The villagers gathered to test it. Children ran across laughing, their footsteps echoing confidently over the wood. The structure did not tremble. Tears filled Edmund's eyes as he watched. He realized that while he had been mourning what he lost, God had quietly preserved what he could still give. His hands might have weakened, but his wisdom had deepened. His family might have been taken from him, but a new purpose had been placed before him. That evening, as the cathedral bells rang, Samuel sat beside Edmund on the familiar bench outside the cottage. "Why did you help us?" the boy asked. Edmund gazed at the fading sunset. "For a long time, I believed my story was over," he said. "I thought God had finished writing it, but I was wrong. Sometimes we mistake a pause for the end." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "Never lose hope, my boy," Edmund continued. "Even when life feels silent, even when prayers seem unanswered, God's plan is larger than our understanding. He sees the whole design, while we see only a corner of the page." In the years that followed, Edmund became a teacher to many young craftsmen in Eldoria. His cottage transformed from a lonely dwelling into a humble workshop filled with sketches and laughter. Samuel grew into a skilled builder, known for his integrity and compassion. He often credited his mentor for shaping not only his craft, but his faith. On a gentle spring morning, as blossoms drifted through the air, Edmund felt his strength finally fading. He lay in his bed, sunlight warming his face. Samuel sat beside him, now a grown man. "Do you think," Samuel asked quietly, "that everything truly has a purpose?" Edmund smiled, his eyes calm and certain. "I have seen enough to believe it does. Even sorrow shapes us. Even waiting prepares us. Trust the architect of your life." With that, Edmund closed his eyes for the final time. The bells of the cathedral rang that day not in mourning alone, but in gratitude. The old architect who once thought his story had ended had discovered that hope does not retire with age. In the ancient kingdom of Eldoria, a simple bridge stood as proof that no life is wasted when placed in God's hands. And so the villagers would tell their children, "Never lose hope. Even in your oldest days, even in your deepest sorrow, remember that God is still building something beautiful through you." Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel.